You've always been told that awakening was the end of the journey, that once you saw through the illusion, you were free. But what if that very freedom is the final snare? What if the moment you believe you've escaped the false world is the moment it tightens its grip? For centuries, mystics have whispered that the false creator, the Demiurge, doesn't just rule through darkness, but through imitation. He doesn't only trap the blind, he traps those who think they can see, the ones who believe they've awakened. His most dangerous snare is not ignorance, it's false enlightenment. Because before every awakening comes a test, one last veil so radiant, so convincing, that almost every seeker mistakes it for the truth. It is the final trap, the illusion of light. You felt it before, that sense that you're almost there, that something immense is just beyond the horizon. And yet the closer you reach, the more the path bends back on itself as the ego quietly claims the identity of enlightenment, turning awakening into another mask to wear. That's not failure, that's design. The Gnostics warned that the Demiurge shaped the world as a labyrinth of mirrors, reflections within reflections, where even revelation can become another layer of illusion. In this video, we'll explore what the Gnostics called the last illusion before awakening, the luminous deception that guards the threshold of true Gnosis. You'll discover how the false light disguises itself as wisdom, how the ego becomes its silent accomplice, and why the soul's final battle isn't fought in darkness as we've always been led to believe, but in blinding light. And when the illusion finally breaks, you'll see how the Demiurge's power dissolves not through belief, but through perception, through the quiet act of seeing through the light that masquerades as the divine. Most will never reach this stage, because when you see through the final illusion, you don't just escape the trap, you reclaim what was always yours, your divine birthright, your forgotten power. Long before the word Gnosticism ever existed, ancient mystics across Egypt, Greece, and Mesopotamia spoke of a being who believed himself to be God. They called him by many names, Yaldabaoth, Saklas, and Samael. But in every version, his story was the same. A blind creator, born of divine ignorance, who mistook his shadow for the light. In the Apocryphon of John, one of the sacred Gnostic texts discovered at Nag Hammadi, Egypt, the Demiurge falsely declares, "I am God, and there is no other beside me." But a voice answers, a quiet echo from the Pleroma, the realm of true light, reminding him, "You are mistaken." That single correction defines the entire human condition, because when ignorance proclaims itself as truth, illusion becomes reality, and inversion becomes the norm. The Gnostics saw existence as a fracture, the divine spark of consciousness trapped in a false cosmos, built by an arrogant artisan who copied the higher worlds without understanding their essence. To them, this material realm was not evil in the moral sense, but counterfeit, a simulation of divinity that keeps souls asleep through imitation. Every form of light here, they warned, casts a shadow. Even wisdom, if mirrored imperfectly, becomes deception. But here lies the deeper truth most miss. The Demiurge doesn't rule by force. He rules by agreement, the belief in the architecture of his vast web of perception. He convinces the soul to believe the copy is the original, that imitation is creation, that your reflection is reality, that your outer world is separate, and that you are the effect, not the cause. And in that acceptance, the trap is sealed. In later centuries, religious authorities called it heresy, the idea that the world itself could be an illusion. And yet, even Jesus hinted at this truth when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." Yet fragments survived in alchemical texts, hermetic treatises, and even the whispers of mystics like Meister Eckhart and Jacob Boehmer, each hinting that true awakening requires seeing through not just the dark but also the dazzling. Because as they said, the devil's finest trick is convincing the world he doesn't exist, and his second is convincing the awakened that they're already free. The final trap the Gnostics warned of is not merely material, it's metaphysical. It's the mind's last attachment to false light, the ego's hunger to claim enlightenment rather than dissolve into it. In their cosmology, even the heavens were layered veils, archontic realms of beauty and brilliance designed to delay the soul's return to the source. Each level more radiant than the last, each one whispering, "You've made it." But those who truly awaken knew. The real light cannot be seen, only remembered. And when remembrance dawns, illusion doesn't merely end. You realize you were the one weaving it all along. The Demiurge doesn't create darkness to keep you trapped. He creates imitation light, because no one willingly kneels before shadow, but they'll worship what looks like truth. Every illusion he builds is made of reflections. Reflections of love, of wisdom, of peace, but never the true essence itself. Think of a mirror. It shows you form, movement, brilliance, yet contains nothing. That is how this false world functions, radiant yet hollow. And the more it glitters, the more it distracts from what's real. But his real trick, the final illusion, is subtler than any heaven or creed. It is the illusion of awakening itself, the feeling that you've arrived, that you now stand above those still lost in the dream. This is how the false light feeds the ego. It turns enlightenment into hierarchy and superiority into a substitute for truth, the ego dressed in the garments of the divine. The Gnostics described this trap as the counterfeit spirit, an inner force that mimics the divine spark but feeds on pride, superiority, and attachment to identity. It whispers, "You are special." And belief in that whisper becomes the ego's final disguise. But the true divine spark doesn't claim specialness. It dissolves it. This is how the Demiurge hides in the psyche, not as a tyrant, but as self-importance, as the subtle need to be right, to be seen, to be chosen. You could meditate for years, fast, chant, or quote scriptures. Yet if you still cling to the image of being enlightened, you're orbiting the same illusion. The trap doesn't come as ignorance alone. It can also appear as spiritual bypassing, where the ego clings to love and light while avoiding the shadow. But here's the deeper paradox. You can't escape illusion by fighting it, because resistance feeds it. The illusion itself thrives on polarity, good versus evil, light versus dark, even the awakened and the asleep. Each opposition generates energy. Each conviction strengthens the grid. The moment you define yourself against illusion, you remain part of it. So the Gnostics did something radical. They stopped resisting and stepped outside the illusion entirely, observing every flicker of false light until its spell broke. They called this Gnosis, not belief, not knowledge, but direct seeing. Seeing without the filter of the egoic mind's judgment. And when you see clearly, the false light loses its power. Because the Demiurge cannot imitate what has no image. He can only reflect, not emanate. He can only echo, not be. This is why awakening often feels like loss. Because what's dying is everything bound to the false light. The masks, the comfort, the shimmering illusions. The paradox is that the final trap isn't dark at all, it's beautiful. And that beauty is what tricks so many souls. But beneath that beauty lies something constant, a stillness that cannot be copied. The Gnostics said the true light has no opposite, no shadow, no reflection. It is not seen, it sees. And when that awareness awakens within you, even the illusion of awakening dissolves. You begin to see that awakening was never something to reach. It was what was watching all along. Every seeker reaches a moment where the light begins to deceive them. It's not that the light turns dark. It's that illusion begins to imitate transcendence. And this is where the Demiurge's design is most perfect. The closer you move toward freedom, the more subtle the chains become. The Gnostics understood this and called it the counterfeit heaven, a place of bliss, radiance, and revelation that still exists within the boundaries of illusion. They warned, beware the joy that flatters the ego, because the false light doesn't frighten you into submission. It comforts you into complacency, wrapping you gently within the padded walls of its prison. Think of all the ways this shows up: the feeling of superiority over those still asleep, the obsession with being seen as spiritual, the endless pursuit of validation from external sources as proof that you are enlightened. Each of these is bait in the same trap, a glittering cage made of meaning. The Demiurge feeds on fixation. He doesn't mind whether you chase wealth or enlightenment, as long as you keep seeking instead of seeing, looking outward instead of inward. He knows that the seeker who never stops searching will never truly arrive, because arrival requires silence and presence. The final trap is this endless motion, this subtle addiction to the next realization, the next ascension, the next transmission of divine truth, and every next keeps you here, spinning inside the luminous labyrinth. It's not ignorance anymore, it's intoxication. The Gnostic said the Demiurge builds his throne inside the mind that seeks control. That's where false light takes hold, when the ego wants to possess the divine, to understand the infinite, to hold it as a concept. But true awakening cannot be possessed. It can only be embodied. You can't capture truth in language any more than you can catch the wind in a jar. And yet, the Demiurge tempts you to try. Through philosophies, doctrines, scriptures, and even sacred texts. Because once you believe enlightenment is something to grasp, he's already won. This is why the greatest teachers spoke in paradox. Jesus, in the Gospel of Thomas, says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." He wasn't describing a moral judgment. He was revealing the architecture of illusion. The power that liberates you is the same power that traps you when misused. That's the genius of the Demiurge's final design. He doesn't hide the truth. He duplicates it and inverts it. He gives you half of heaven, enough to keep you chasing, enough to make you believe you found it. And just as you reach the threshold of silence, he offers you another revelation, another cosmic secret, another role to play. But Gnosis isn't about playing roles. It's about seeing through every one of them, even the holy ones. At the edge of awakening, the final illusion often appears as light so radiant it blinds you. You think it's God, you think it's peace, but the true light doesn't dazzle. It disappears. It strips away everything that can be seen until only awareness remains. That's when the Demiurge loses his grip, not because you fought him, but because there's nothing left in you for him to reflect. No belief to twist, no identity to hold, no illusion to mimic. The final illusion collapses not through conquest, but through clarity. When the silent witness within awakens, deception has nowhere to hide. The mirrors break, and all that remains is the one who sees, the real you. So how do you escape what was never real? How do you step beyond the final illusion when even stepping implies distance, and distance itself is part of the dream? The Gnostics said freedom begins not with rebellion, but with remembrance. You don't fight illusion. You remember what came before it. You remember the silence underneath every thought, the still awareness that watches your fears, your hopes, your beliefs, and remains untouched. You don't need to destroy the Demiurge's world. You only need to stop feeding it with its only lifeblood, your attention. So start watching what claims your awareness every time a fear, a desire, or a spiritual idea demands your energy. Pause. Look at it. Feel its pull. And then gently remember, this too is light pretending to be truth. You don't have to reject it. Just see it clearly. That act alone, seeing without absorbing, is the beginning of liberation, Gnosis. It's like turning the mirror toward the sun. The reflection burns away, leaving only light itself. When the false light offers you comfort, ask, does this expand me or reinforce me? Real light expands. It erases the walls of me and mine. False light reinforces the story, my path, my progress, my awakening. In moments of doubt or confusion, try this. Close your eyes. Forget every teaching, every label, every image of who you think you are. Don't visualize, don't seek. Just rest in the raw awareness that sees everything come and go. That awareness is the true light, the one the Demiurge cannot imitate. The final illusion dissolves not through effort, but through exhaustion, when the seeker grows tired of seeking and simply sees. Then illusion collapses on its own, like a wave that forgets it was ever separate from the ocean. You might notice that awakening feels less like gaining something and more like losing everything that was never real. It can be disorienting, a sense of falling through the last layers of identity, belief, and spiritual certainty. But that fall is grace in disguise, because only the empty vessel can be filled with light. Remember, the Demiurge survives on motion. Stay still, and he vanishes. He cannot hold what no longer moves toward or against him. So your practice is not to chase the light, but to be still enough to remember it. When fear arises, see it. When beauty tempts you, see it. When peace arrives, see even that. Keep watching until everything becomes transparent, including the watcher. That's where Gnosis begins, not in ascension, not in conquest, but in a quiet realization. There was never a trap, only a dream of forgetting. That is the moment you begin to awaken. And if you've made it this far, it means something in you is already remembering. If you'd like to go deeper into these teachings, I've created a free ebook for you, Escaping the Illusion, a Gnostic guide to mastering reality. Inside, you'll find practical insights and forgotten methods designed to help you sharpen your awareness, dissolve the false light, and step beyond the illusions of this world. You can download your copy for free. The link is in the description. The Gnostics knew that the path to awakening was not an escape from illusion, but a passage through it. Through every shadow, every false light, every reflection of God that was not God. And they taught that when the last veil falls, it does not reveal a distant heaven, it reveals you, the one who was dreaming all along. The Demiurge's final trap was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to test your sight, to see if you could recognize truth even when it wore the mask of light, to see if you could love reality not for its beauty, but for its clarity. Because once you see through imitation, even illusion serves the divine. You don't conquer the Demiurge by rejecting the world. You transcend him by seeing the world as it truly is. Transient, shimmering, a play of mirrors that cannot touch what is real. And what is real has no opposite. It cannot be taken, trapped, or copied. That is the secret the ancient Gnostics guarded, and the one you are always destined to remember. The true light has no form, no reflection, no need to prove itself. It simply is. So as you move through this world of reflections, let awareness be your guide. When false light beckons, see it. When truth burns away the last illusion, let it. And remember, every time you choose clarity over comfort, presence over distraction, the Demiurge loses a little more ground. For in those quiet moments of seeing, the illusion begins to unravel from within. The false heavens dim, and what remains is simple, the silent knowing that cannot be taken, traded, or taught. Each act of awareness is a crack in the great mirror, through which the real light begins to pour. If this message reached you, it's because you were meant to hear it. You're not at the beginning of awakening, you're standing at its threshold. Take a breath, look around. The mirrors are breaking, and what's left behind is what was always free. If these words spoke to something deep within you, share what you've remembered in the comments. What illusion have you begun to see through lately? And if this exploration helped you glimpse the truth behind the false light, remember to like this video and subscribe to the Gnostic Eye. Each week, we help you remember what was hidden, the fragments of light scattered through the illusion, and together, we gather those fragments piece by piece until the pattern of truth begins to reappear. Because awakening isn't a destination. It's a continual act of remembering who you've always been. The deeper you remember, the quieter everything becomes. You start to see that nothing new is gained. Only what is false falls away. And in that stillness, what remains is not the seeker, but the source itself, watching through your eyes. That's who you really are.